Hello and welcome back to the J&Z podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a movie. Would you believe it? We went to go see The Creator. It's been out a couple weeks now. I saw it opening weekend, but just scheduling and stuff. But in the meantime, I think Zeth's made a video about it and seems to really like it. What would you say, Zeth?
Yeah, it's my favorite movie of the year so far. I know there's only a few more left that I'm interested in, but this was by far my favorite of the year so far.
Better than Spider-Verse.
Better than Spider-Verse, better than Mission Impossible. I just really heavily enjoyed this movie.
And I couldn't disagree more. So we should
Man.
have a interesting discussion to say the least. So it should be fun. Let's get into it.
All right.
Now to start, I don't think this is a bad movie. By any stretch of the imagination, it's a perfectly fine movie. I just feel that it lacks some things. I walked out of there feeling like it was almost like a missed opportunity. Something was just kind of missing from it. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of figured it out. But
Well, what
I
is it
will,
then?
I will say there's a lot. Before I get into some of the disagreement parts, I will say it did a lot right. I loved the world that it built. As far as like sci-fi fantasy, it can get a little bit samey, but they had some really sweet art design. Like everything, all the weapons and stuff were basically like the checkout barcode scanner at the Walmart, like but just like huge, and that was pretty cool actually.
So I'm in agreement with you with the whole world building. I think that this is one of the strongest world building that like a movie has done recently. And when it comes to the sci-fi genre, that's so important to have world building and to really have your audience like hooked in that, like they want to see more of it. And that's something that's been sadly missing from sci-fi movies recently, where it's all the same, or like one good sci-fi movie might come on Netflix as like an indie movie or something like that, but it's just not what sci-fi used to be, in my opinion. Like sci-fi used to be always so interesting. Like you'd want to see more of the world, like Star Wars or uh, Star Trek, for instance. Like just a lot of that, you would always want to see more of it. And sadly, sci-fi has kind of been generalized to big action movies like Star Wars or like a Star Trek show. And it's just all kind of felt samey recently. But this was like so unique, and I'm in agreement with like the guns, for instance. Like everything had its own unique flair. Like nothing looked like it was pulled from a Star Wars or a Star Trek or some other sci-fi show like Babylon 5, for instance. um Same thing goes for like all the robots. Like all the robots were super unique.
I think so too. I like now as far as execution goes, for the dynamic relationships part, we'll get into that later. But I liked that there was a bit of a conflict between the humans and like the humanoid robots, whether or not they were real people, because they were like very well implemented into society. And I think their designs were cool, and they were able to convince you. Like the main character child, one of the main characters, is 100% a robot. There's no doubt about it. And yet they're just like a human being. They're quite
Mm-hmm.
literally, for all intents and purposes, a human with no flesh or blood. They're just an AI, and you can basically copy yourself. You can upload yourself to the computer or whatever, and it'll put you into a robot and mass produce. And it's just a really interesting world, I think, in that regard. That was kind of its main selling point.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement when it comes to the different sort of like robots. Like not every robot looked the exact same. You had the one robots where they were like showing them in the beginning sort of like there was a medical robot or something like that. You have the police robots that kind of all look similar, but then you have like the ones that you were talking about where they're more of the AI humanoid robots, and they all look totally different. But they're all kind of put into the same category as a robot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like the fact that that could kind of make that distinction. Like the police ones, like you said, they almost look mass produced. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost intentional, given that it's like, oh, this is the ideal soldier one, whatever. They don't go out of their way to say it, but it just kind of the way everybody looks a little bit different, but sometimes like you have the clones as well. I don't know. There's just something about it. They did a great job just showing a little. It almost was a little bit dystopian, a little bit unsettling, and it kind of helped to send the message out too that they were trying to tell. They did it.
Yeah.
I just like their designs.
Yeah, and that goes for like the budget. Like this movie was, you know, nothing compared to like Indiana Jones or The Flash, for instance, and its CGI just blew both of those movies out of the water. Like the humanoid robots like that you were talking about, the way that like you could see through their skeletal
Yeah, that was
features on
cool.
their neck, that just looked like it was straight out of almost like a $200 million movie.
I agree. No, yeah. What would you say their budget was again, though?
It was
Or
something really tiny, like $85 million. Now that's a lot of money, but for something like this, like a big sci-fi like
it
blockbuster
was a lot of
movie,
CGI in there, so it's pretty surprising they kept it that low.
yeah, like the part that still impresses me the most was the part when it's in the middle and there's that bridge fight that goes on and the tanks come in and then like the explosions really start to go off and a lot of bullets and like robots are blowing up. Like that was just amazing.
Yeah, there was a lot of cool scenes. I loved how imposing. I think it was the U.S. Army or whatever. They just in the future, and they just would come in rolling, and then I don't know I just love the weapon system they implemented. I love the big barcode scanner in the sky, how it would highlight targets to send out. I liked how the missiles locked onto people, and you could tell
Hmm.
because they had like that like flickering blue laser following them, like just saying you're about to get hit by a missile. Like that was just neat details like that. You could tell. I don't know. They just did a great job showing a military or whatever that was um clearly spent a lot of money developing technologies or whatever up against a resistance force.
Yeah, and I think like the best thing about this movie was the character arcs. I really really love the character arcs in this movie.
Hmm.
I like, for instance, and like the little stories behind everybody. Like everybody kind of has like a little story almost, you know, to kind of like tease something where you would want to know more about that person. Like the general lady that keeps following Joshua,
Right.
uh how she's in the war still, even though both of her sons have died, and then one of the sons fell in love with a barmaid, I think she said.
Yep.
That was a humanoid, and when he went to go purchase her to be his wife, he got tortured or something like that, or drug off and got killed because of it. So like there's kind of like some resentment there from her. So, just really kind of everybody has motivation and character arcs. I just really like that.
I agree. On a personal level, I feel like the main characters, the guy's arc was, getting over the fact that he resented the humanoids. And I'd like to save this to talk about a bit later. The whole overlaying story, I don't like how it was told. I don't like how it played out. And it kind of made what were otherwise perfectly fine, um, like character like starting points, how like feelings of resentment and stuff, the reasoning behind it, because the overarching story took a turn I didn't like. It didn't. It made them a little less, impactful as a result.
I guess I don't
Maybe
really.
I should get into that. So
Yeah,
my
let's
biggest
let's get into
problem
that.
is how they presented the humanoids, because at first it was I always wondered, why in a lot of fiction they always present it the same way. You look at like Overwatch's story. I'm thinking of like a couple other ones where there's like the robot resistance because because the humans treated them so bad or because whatever, they rose up against the people. But the people always had some kind of reason. There was always some faction. There was always something to pit the humans against the robots, and the robots fight back, and it gets kind of complicated. I know for a fact there's another story that did that, and they start out by doing that, but the so in the movie They say the humanoid robots blew up like San Francisco
Yeah.
with a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And so throughout the time you're like trying to figure out why did they do that? Like they seem nice. Why did the humanoid robots go about doing that? And it's revealed probably two-thirds of the way through the movie, just nonchalantly dropped by one of the resistance fighters, that the nuclear bomb drop was a complete accident by like the US government or whatever, and they just blamed it on the humanoids because they didn't like them and they were just a scapegoat and so they were hunted down. And so the entire time they really just didn't do anything and they were 100% innocent.
Well, it's kind of like real wars at times. Sometimes that's just how a real war sometimes is.
Yeah, but it was just kind of underwhelming. It wasn't like they uncovered this deep dark government secret. What were they covering up? He was literally just turning over back behind. He's like, we didn't even drop that bomb, right? Like we didn't even do it.
I
Okay.
guess I didn't really see the whole war as part of like the main cataclysm. Like the war was kind of like in the background mostly, while the main storyline was mostly about Joshua, the child, as well as the mother character.
Yes, and but that all ties into it because he lost his like family or whatever in that nuclear bomb explosion. And so the entire time it's working up like, oh, he meets this child and it's kind of changing his perspective on like how he views the robots because even though they hurt his family, even though they hurt him, he lost his arm, whatever, because of this whole mess, even though it's their fault, he still starts seeing them as human. And that's the point they want to make, but it kind of falls flat when two-thirds of the way through they're literally like they have absolutely zero responsibility and he has zero reason to resent him, not because he views him as human but because they quite literally didn't do anything at all, and that was his whole character arc.
I guess I like I said, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. Um, I'm kind of glad that that's the way they went with the story a little bit, just because like both sides were kind of in the wrong at first. Like you feel bad for the New Asia, I think it's called in the movie, but you also feel bad for the U.S. government at the same time. So I kind of like that they set a clear good guy, bad guy. You know what I mean? Like halfway through.
I i guess there just was absolutely no nuance to it whatsoever is the only thing.
Yeah, like I
There
said,
was no
I don't.
reason besides just because. Like you just pin it on the robots, and then that's just because they didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and
I
I mean,
I guess, but
I'm fine with that. Like I said, I was just so happy with everything else that even something like maybe that, which I mean, I had no problem with it, but I guess if other people do, I can overlook that very easily. Like I said, I don't think that's just like the main focus of the story wasn't on the war. It was mostly about the relationship of Joshua.
agreed. But every single like his war buddies, they all started warming up. The one guy had a AI girlfriend. He used to hate him because that's why he joined the army, is because you know they attacked San Francisco. They literally just dropped a nuclear bomb in the city. So it just in the back of my mind from that point on, just every single human AI relationship that used to have some sort of nuance, some sort of like, in spite of the circumstances, they were able to see them as human. All that stuff is just like, oh, they just didn't do anything, so they have no reason to hate them.
Hmm.
So there's that they didn't think they were all that evil before. They didn't think of them as less. Well, maybe they did.
I guess, but at that point in the story, Joshua didn't see the robots as human yet. It's not until the big battle on the bridge happens, which that's this reveal is before that. So
Yeah.
I
So
so
that makes even less sense. He,
I I don't
I
know. I
get
guess I don't know.
it was kind of insinuated that the whole point that he thinks of them as lesser than human, or why he has such a hard time thinking of it, is because he just views them as machines that just calculated how many people they could kill at once and dropped a bomb. That's how he kind of viewed it. That's how he kind of got around his feelings about killing them or whatever. Is he's like, oh, they're just robots. They're just machines, and they're just trying to kill us. Like that's literally his whole. That's what he keeps telling himself to try to stop himself from actually getting to having a nuanced view. That's just how I felt they were trying to present it until that point.
Hmm. I guess I disagree. Like I said, I don't see it as that big of a deal. It didn't hinder me from the movie at all. I've seen it twice now.
But
I don't know. My only issue with the movie is that it's a slow burn movie. I love slow burning movies more than the next guy. Like especially if it's a really good story like this or really good world building. But I probably don't have to see this for a long time. It's sort of like Gareth Edwards' other movies like Rogue One or the 2014 Godzilla film where good
it was
character
very much
arcs.
Rogue One, and like you could tell.
Yeah, like I mean it was the same cinematographer, but good character arcs, interesting characters, interesting story, great CGI,
Hmm.
but he kind of plays the movies the exact same where it's a slow burn movie. And there's no problem with that, but down the road that might get a little old.
Right. No, I could see that.
That's my only complaint about the movie really. And
Oh, I had
uh,
one other one, and it's not nearly as big of a deal, but there was something about that lady that she just almost didn't seem evil enough. Like she did some things, like the ones that were following her. And I think back, remember the beginning of the movie where they quite clearly shot something at the back of that lady before she hopped on the transport ship and it blew up. Like it wasn't really that much of a surprise.
oh yeah, I know what you're going to complain about.
There was that, which just seemed kind of obvious, and then later on in the movie, there was actually like a decent scene where, you know, the little main character girl, she can disable all like electronics in the vicinity,
Mhm.
and she had the same lady, she got a detonator stuck to her, and it was going to go off, and the little girl was controlling it, but they were trying to kill her, so the guys shot at the little girl, and she ended up blowing up. That was kind of a neat scene, but like it would have been so much better if that woman was on that like gunship, and to show just how like brutal what she was or whatever, like she just wasn't presented brutal enough. She could have like kicked the lady off or something that had the bomb strapped to her, even though she was one of her own men. And then later on in the movie, it would have kind of like come full circle to when it was still attached to her. That scene would have been so much better
Hmm. I guess
if something like that was established, because she just seemed kind of reasonable throughout at least the beginning part of it. Like she had pretty legit reasons. She believed what she believed, and
yeah, and I think that was what they were trying to go for. I don't think like being ruthless and there really wasn't a need for a main villain. Like I said, the main villain was mostly the relationships and the way that Joshua felt. It wasn't really about the war or necessarily who was following them. So I don't really agree with that.
I don't know. I think it would have been better that way. They just needed a little bit. They
It
didn't.
was cool though. I did not expect that. I didn't expect that beginning where it's like establishing all these little platoon guys and then they all die. I did not expect that at all.
I expected it once I saw she got like I heard the thump, and you knew it was coming. I didn't.
Oh, well, once that happens, but like when they were setting up all these characters during the mission, like they kept mentioning
Oh,
everybody's names.
that was another thing. The dialogue got way better later on, but I swear they used the most canned video game cutscene dialogue of all time when they were infiltrating that base. They would just say the most generic phrases. It's like
Well, I mean they
medic.
that's their point. Like
I
they
need
just
a.
want to get to the point. There's no need to
I know, but they
just
were like ripped
talk.
straight out of just a whatever cutscene. Like it was almost intentional. It feels.
Well, maybe it was. But I think that the acting in this movie was really great. Um, and one thing that I constantly complain about is children in these big blockbuster sci-fi projects. They never work.
Oh, you got a point. And this one's good. I'll let you explain why this one works and the other ones don't, but you're
Kids in
100% right.
Star Wars, I hate kids in Star Wars. Anytime like in The Last Jedi, the broom boy and like all those guys, like go away. Same thing with young Anakin
Episode 3.
Skywalker. Go away. I just don't want anything to do with children in like these because it's their acting sometimes isn't the best. Sometimes their characters just are like, they're the innocent person, But this one was kind of interesting because uh the acting for this little girl that they had was incredible. Like when she was sad, you felt it. When she was really happy, you felt it. It wasn't cringy. There wasn't any dialogue that she said where you could say, "Oh, they could have done like one more take with that or two more takes." Like I just think that she did a really, really excellent job all the way through, and there wasn't anything that I could pick apart with that.
I liked her character a lot. That's 100% true. I feel like you did a great job explain like when it comes to children in movies, this movie taught me that the less they say the better. Cuz
Hmm.
when she actually talked and the fact that, like you said most movies and action films it's always like, "Oh, what if the kid gets into like some wacky scenario? He's driving a pod racer and it's
Hmm.
funny cuz he's a kid." They don't do that in this one. It's treated mostly very seriously. Like she's not like she has a very serious purpose and ability, and it's never taken like she was not. I just they never really played her much as a kid, as much as just a really interesting person that
Yeah.
happens to be a kid who just doesn't know much, but isn't stupid. Like she doesn't just say stupid things. She'll sometimes ask questions or she kind of knows her purpose. Sometimes she knows more than the main character. And
Hmm.
so it's more like interesting just kind of discovering what she thinks and what she can do. That was so much better than 99.9% of other kids in any movie I've ever seen. So I'll give it that for
And
sure.
you know what was kind of cool that I noticed was, how in the beginning, they don't understand each other, or like she like quote unquote pretends not to know like what he's talking about.
Mhm.
There's a scene that's only shot for like 2 seconds. I only noticed it on my second time. But you know that translator that talks in uh like the robotic language that's like a translator for them?
I think so. I think so, yeah.
She was playing with it for like 2 seconds and translating the dials and learning the language as he was talking in the truck.
Oh, that's awesome.
So then the minute like that he talks English in like the next scene or whatever, that's when she starts to talk the exact same language that he does. Cuz
Oh,
he
that's kind
she
of
doesn't
cool.
understand. She only speaks, whatever they were speaking in the previous scenes.
Right.
But that was just really cool, I thought. And I think it all comes to play like her acting was really intense at the end. And that goes for the main character as well, who played Joshua. I always forget his name. I just know he's Denzel Washington's son. Um, but both of those guys, when she's in like the pod and he's in like the bay, and they're like saying goodbye to each other, that was really, really good. And like
that
the
was
music
right. That was good.
swelling, so good.
Yeah. There's just something about kids in most movies that just whenever they just start crying, you almost kind of want to laugh because it's just so weird sometimes. Like it's just totally rips you out of the moment sometimes to where it's just not great. But this was not one of those.
You
Like
felt it.
you really did
It was a
feel it.
really good emotional moment. You wanted Joshua to be with the kid.
I think it helps that she never like she didn't learn a ton throughout the movie. She learned a lot about like what it means to be a person and such and very neat concepts like that, but you still feel like she's almost like alone at the end, like you almost feel like she's getting abandoned again, and that makes it all the more difficult, I feel. um not like just for her, and you kind of that kind of comes across in how they presented it, like it wasn't No, there was no like great answers. She had to leave him behind. She wasn't able to talk to her mother. He was barely able to reconnect with his, you know, child's parent or his mother, his girlfriend, whatever.
Mm,
But you just never like you got the feeling of hope, but you didn't get the I don't know how to put it. But there's still some work cut out and it almost leaves you uncertain as to how things are going to turn out from there. But that kind of makes the sacrifice even more impactful. I liked that aspect of it, I guess. I guess that's the way I'm going to put it.
mm. Yeah, no, I like the ending. Um, I didn't really know where the ending was going, to be honest. Like the way that me and Peyton and like Brady and all them thought the way it was going to end was on that bridge battle. Like that just feels like a third act battle. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
like that just felt like, oh, the ending's coming. They're gonna end it. Maybe part two will do something. But it just kept going and going and going, and you're like, man, I wonder where this is kind of going. And some things I didn't like 100%. Like, I'm not saying this is a perfect movie or whatever. I did enjoy it. It's my favorite movie of the year. But I think having the wife alive still was a little strange. Now, granted, it works with the character arcs perfectly. Same thing with the child, but I don't think the child needed to be like what that one humanoid was like, oh, it's an exact copy of your child or whatever. It's like, hmm, I don't think so.
They picked the weirdest path possible for Maya. Because she was still alive, but she was just brain dead. And
Yeah.
the robots can't kill or whatever, so they just didn't take her off life support. So they just show up only to have to take her off life support. And I don't know what that really accomplished. I know what they were trying to go for about like the whole like,
Well,
am
it's
I going to
him
go to
letting
heaven because I'm a robot? But
well, it's him letting go of the situation. Like throughout the whole movie, he just wants to see Maya. He just wants to see Maya. It's the whole reason that he's hanging on to the kid for that reason, because he knows Maya. But and then he has to be the one to shut her down and stuff like that. But I'm just saying, like, that's the only thing I guess I can complain about. Um, just because from the fact that like a nuclear warhead was dropped on her and she still survived, like that's just the only thing that's kind of a little wacky.
yeah, everyone else died there. I don't know how that worked out.
Yeah. Um,
Oh, that was the other point. The only slightly like that drew me up out of the movie a little bit was at the end on the giant like staple looking thing, like the little like stamp looking barcode scanner that was
mhm.
gonna send all the missiles. It didn't seem 100% right. I get the missiles were gonna go blow up the rest of the robots, but the little girl at the end of the movie, without hesitation, like at all, it's kind of the same feeling as like if you really think about everyone that was on the Death Star when it blew up. Like there was a lot of people on that thing, and they weren't all like there was just like janitors, whatever.
People on the Death Star evacuated.
They were.
Yeah. There's the scene when Luke's dragging his father Vader. Everybody's
Hmm,
evacuating in the background during that scene.
I guess, but at the same time, I don't think they did in this movie. And you could see there was like just a stinking hydroponics farm or something. Like some dude was just there to plant some crops on this giant floating stapler. And
I think there was a scene that they said like evacuate now or something like that, cuz I
there
do
was a
remember
thousand
something like
percent
that.
people on that thing. I guarantee it. There was no doubt in my mind.
Well, that's not a big deal. People were dying left and right in this movie.
But she didn't. But they never brought that to anyone's attention. They did not find a peaceful way to stop anything, which is fair. But the little girl, like, she was always on board. She's like, yeah, let's just bring it down, easy peasy. The only reason she even hesitated at all was because he was on there, and so was like her mom thing.
I
But that
guess.
I was just like, she's shockingly okay with just bringing this whole thing down with everyone on it. That just was a little bit silly to me with
Well,
the
cuz
message
that's
they
her
were trying to
purpose.
say.
That was her purpose. That's literally the reason this thing was built.
Right.
The only thing that's a little strange is the woman Maya, she builds this child to take down the super weapon. That's the entire point of the child. That's like the point that the humanoids were trying to make. They were trying to get her up there so she could destroy it. That was her entire purpose for being built. The
Yes.
thing is, this humanoid was meant to grow over time. There's like one sentence in there that is like, it's a child and it will eventually grow into an adult. So it's like the first humanoid to actually like have human nature, like ability like that. And that was like the whole point of her though. So when Josh was like, let's bring this down, she would be like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Was did they ever say if it was like a robot baby and it grew up, or was it just
There's like something in there.
because if they were waiting till it was grown up, they would all be dead. Like,
Well, the reason I don't know why they made it as a child exactly. Maybe it was just to show that like humanoids can be human as well, or like they have human nature at heart or something like that. But this one eventually could grow into an adult, and when it was an adult, that's when it's established that it could reach the super weapon without having to fly up there or anything. Because remember uh, Watanabe's character, he's like, we're gonna fly her up there and she'll have to destroy it, but she'll die in the end. And
yeah,
the one robot was really mad because he's like, does she know? And he's like, no, she's innocent, she doesn't know her purpose.
hmm,
So
I
that's
see.
something that maybe you just missed, which I mean, I there's a lot of stuff that I missed on the first viewing.
Yeah, I could see that. There was, but
I highly enjoyed this movie. Of course, it's not perfect. I don't need a movie to be perfect, but it surpassed a lot of stuff this year. Just I loved that it was finally an original sci-fi project. I am so sick of Star Wars and Star Trek. I'm to the point where I'm not excited about anything that comes from those franchises anymore. I could care less if they announced uh Luke Skywalker trilogy. I just don't care anymore about Star Wars or Star Trek. And so to see an original sci-fi project that was written completely fresh, this isn't based off of anything. This isn't taken from a poem, not based off of anything. Just to see it come to fruition, have really, really good CGI. This isn't some Netflix production on a budget that's almost twice as less than most movies this year. Like Spider-Verse had a bigger budget than this. And it turned out really good. I mean, I'm just very impressed.
this movie does kind of have the plot of The Mandalorian to an extent, doesn't it?
A little bit. I mean, if you're to like take everything at face value, there's stuff taken from Mandalorian, stuff taken from Star Wars, stuff taken from Star Trek, stuff taken from uh
Oh, I know. I'm just saying the whole message of like
everything.
this bounty hunter whose sole purpose is to just get rid of it finds a lost child who ends up being a lot more than he bargained for, and together they can, the whole thing. I just realized that. I was wondering what it reminded me of so much, but that was just the basic general plot of the Mandalorian. But
Yeah.
again, I liked a lot of aspects of this movie. There was some stuff I think it did better than most other times I've seen it done. There was just some major things that I felt held me back from taking some stuff more seriously in this story, and ended up kind of undermining the message it was trying to give. And I just
I
uh,
don't even like really care about the message, to be honest. Like when it comes to movies, I just want an entertaining movie.
I
This was that.
agree, but they wanted to tell a message. That's why they made one side like explicitly like the bad guy. They
I
wanted to
guess,
say
but I mean,
something. Like that was the whole point.
I guess, but then you're like trying to say that there's a message in everything if there's just a bad guy. Like you have the light side and the dark side. I mean,
I guess, but I think this one's a little more grounded in reality, if you know what I'm saying, as for what
yeah.
they're going for.
But I mean, like just taking like all the movies that have released this year, like this year has just been pretty bad.
I
uh,
all I'm saying is Spider-Verse and Mission Impossible are far better than this movie, and it's not even close. But it's still not a bad movie. I'd even
I
consider
liked
it
it better than both of
good.
those. I really did, and that's
You
just
like
because
the
I'm a
slow burn sci-fi one with some decent visuals and an okay story
yeah.
more than the literally 2.5 hours of nonstop action that's Mission Impossible that somehow doesn't
It's a
manage to
it's a di-
drag.
it's a different genre. Like you're talking action, and this is more of sci-fi, like pure sci-fi. You know, eh, y- and it's something that hasn't existed in forever. I feel. Yeah, it had some action moments, but I do enjoy a slow burn movie when they're really good. I mean, like Sound of Music is kind of a slow burn movie, and that's a really good one.
I might like the Sound of Music better than this one, I'm not gonna lie.
But I mean, like, we're talking just a little bit. It's not like this is like leaps and bounds better than Mission Impossible. I'm not saying that, but I did have just as good of a time with it.
Right. I get that.
But I'm also examining it at the same time. Like, this had almost like it had beautiful shots like Mission Impossible. It had really good acting like Mission Impossible, really good action, really good story, and it was
I
all
think Mission
done.
Impossible's action was better. It's hard to beat Tom Cruise literally jumping off of a mountain on a dirt bike and then
It was
paragliding
Mission
away.
Impossible's action was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm conflicted about this year, and just to see an original project come out and it not suck, it was pretty good.
I don't think this year was that bad, honestly. What,
I do.
Spider-Verse, Mission Impossible, you got Barbie.
You did not like Barbie
It was different, I'll give it that. It was something else. Did
this
42
year.
come out this year?
42,
Million, whatever the Adam Driver one we always
65,
65. See, I don't even care
the
enough to remember
worst
it.
movie of the year.
Did that come out this year?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah, it
a
wasn't a great
January
year, was
release.
it?
No, this
Just
year
had
the
to
only
throw it in there.
movies that have been good in my opinion that are on my list is this, Mission Impossible, Guardians Volume 3, Super Mario Brothers, and then Spider-Verse. Not in that order, but just like
That's a great lineup for a year. Do you know? Look at
but for
last year. See how many we actually liked that came out that year. I
I would have to
promise there's
look up a
more this year.
list, but and
This
they're
is
all
not a bad
sequels.
year.
They're all sequels though. I don't want to
Mario wasn't. The creator wasn't. You liked that one.
but Mario was based off of a property. I mean,
Everything's based off something. I don't know.
I don't know. I like this just as much as anything else because it was just original. And I love originality. I'm so sick of sequels and remakes and quadriquels and prequels. I'm done. I
No, I
really
get you.
am.
I'm all for the independent studios starting to come back a bit and making some cool stuff. I've always enjoyed a good, fresh original story. I am too getting sick of the sequels.
Yeah, so that's just why this is over everything else, in my opinion. I just taking it as face value as something original, that makes it leaps and bounds better than anything else, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's gonna be
It also
difficult on my
helps if they
list.
do better. Like not everything can be like a New Hope or whatever. Like you can't just
Oh, I
most
know, I
sequels are
know.
just the same movie but worse. What's the point? At least they're
But I mean,
trying. Spider Verse is at least a bigger overarching story. It's not
yeah, but that's a sequel. Like, I mean, you're already established with the characters and stuff like that. But I'm not saying this is like leaps and bounds better than Mission Impossible or Spider Verse. I mean, it's very smidgen. We're talking like just a few points more,
right.
just because of its originality and its score and stuff like that. But I mean, I know this overtook One Piece. I thought One Piece was the best thing that released this year, and this comes out.
Yeah, One Piece catered to its audience really well. But that's also a little bit of that's way more of a hard comparison to make than anything else considering it's a TV show.
Yeah.
But But yeah, overall, I'd say it's a fine movie. I thought I had a good time watching it. So, and I know Zeth really liked it.
Yeah. Hey, are we gonna review Godzilla 2000? Are you gonna go see it in the theater November 1st?
Was that the Matthew Roderick one?
No. It's an original Japanese one.
When is it coming out?
November 1st. It's one day only. But then
Isn't it
we have
Sub-Zero? What's it called? What?
Sub-Zero.
What's it called?
Okay, so there's 2 Godzilla movies that you can see in theaters the next month and then in December. So on November 1st, it's like the 25th anniversary of Godzilla 2000. It's one day only, November 1st in theaters. If you want to see that.
I'll
And then
think.
in
I'll
and
think about
then
it.
and then in December is when they're doing like the big run of Godzilla Minus One, which is the newest Godzilla Japanese film.
Okay.
So we gotta
Yeah, we can look into that. I'll see
we
when they're
could.
playing.
I'm excited for Godzilla Minus One.
Yeah, I bet.
That might
I
overtake everything, to be honest.
I would not be surprised.
Yeah,
So.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Give me more Godzilla.
Oh yeah. Alrighty. Well, at least we got to review something positive for once, which is pretty cool. This is a little bit of a step up from what was the what was the house one called
Oh
with the
yeah, the
prosecutor?
nothing but
Nothing
trouble.
but trouble.
Leave it to Jace to forget our movie titles every
I only
single
forget
podcast.
the bad ones that I.
Every single one. We review Mission Impossible. What was this one called again?
I remember Mission Impossible. I'm sorry I don't remember whatever number Adam Driver movie. I just call it the Adam Driver movie. Everyone
Oh.
knows what it's who I'm talking about. So, either way, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great rest of your day.